around babies, it's like they're just soaking up every single thing around them. Like their brains are on overdrive, figuring the world out.
Totally.
And the thing is, it's not like they're starting from zero, you know? Not a blank slate like people used to think. And that's what we're diving into today. The incredible minds of babies.
Yeah, it's a perspective that really makes you question some of the old ideas about how kids develop, how they learn. Get ready to rethink everything you thought you knew about those little brains.
So we're digging into this piece, and it argues that children are born persons, not just like empty containers waiting to be filled.
Right.
And it starts with this powerful image describing a baby as, get this, a jewel of astonishing worth.
And that statement, it might seem simple, but it's actually a pretty revolutionary idea, especially for the time it was written in. Back then, most people thought of education as shaping children, molding them to fit what adults thought was right.
Oh, interesting.
But this piece, it flips the script. It's saying, wait a minute. These tiny humans, they come into the world with their own value already there, their own abilities.
It makes you wonder if we've been going about this whole teaching thing kind of backward, huh?
It definitely makes you reconsider some things. Our source really stresses how much babies are capable of right from the start. Like there's this quote it uses from the poet Thomas Traherne, where he talks about seeing the world as a baby. He says, "The corn was orient and immortal wheat, which never should be reaped nor was ever sown."
Wow, okay. That's not just a pretty picture. It speaks to how intense everything must feel for them, right? How new and amazing the world is.
Absolutely. And, with that wonder comes a ton of learning. Think about it. Everything is brand new to a baby. Gravity, language, how to interact with people, all those things they don't even think about. They have to learn it all from scratch.
It's not like us just trying to remember where we put our keys or something. It's learning everything.
Exactly.
We're talking about figuring out how to move their own bodies, recognize faces, understand language, sometimes even multiple languages at once. And they're doing all this before they're even potty trained.
Yeah.
Makes adult learning seem kind of pathetic in comparison, right?
Well, the source actually compares it to a Martian landing on Earth and having to figure everything out.
Oh, I like that.
It's not just about how much there is to learn, but how much brain power it takes for a baby to do it.
Which kind of makes me think about that phase every parent or, anyone who's spent time around kids knows, that why phase where they're endlessly curious about everything.
Right.
Like my niece, she used to ask me why the sky was blue every single day for like a month.
And sometimes we might be tempted to just brush those questions off, but what if there's more to it?
Yeah.
What if all those whys are really a sign of something deeper? That babies are hardwired to figure out the world.
Like their little brains are these like mini detective agencies, always searching for clues, putting things together, trying to crack the code of, everything.
Exactly. And think about it. They're doing all of this without the years of knowledge and experience that we rely on as adults. They're starting from scratch.
It's like those moments when you see a baby finally get a new concept. Like they've had a mini breakthrough. It's not just cute anymore. It's like, whoa, there's some serious mental gymnastics happening in there.
Exactly. And that leads us to another important point. Our source brings up the idea of a child's will developing alongside their conscience.
No, interesting.
So as their brains are growing, so is their ability to understand right and wrong. But it's more than that.
Okay, so it's not just about learning what they're supposed to do, but like, why?
Exactly. Our source says true obedience. It's not about just blindly following orders or avoiding getting in trouble.
Right.
It's about developing that internal compass, that sense of right and wrong that comes from within. There's a line in the text that really sums it up. Compliance can be forced, but willing obedience is a free choice.
So it's about them making those choices for themselves.
Yes. And that's a big deal because it means children, they're not just passively soaking up information like sponges.
Yeah.
They're actively involved in shaping their own moral compass, even from a young age.
They're already like little philosophers figuring out their own code of ethics. That's amazing.
Right. They're developing their own ideas about fairness, justice, empathy, all of that, even if they don't have the words for it yet.
It's funny. We talk about all these amazing things babies are learning and figuring out, but we don't always think about how intensely they must experience emotions too.
It's true. We tend to focus on their cognitive development, but their emotional world is just as rich and complex.
Right. And it's easy to forget because we see childhood as this time of innocence and wonder.
But kids, They feel the whole range of emotions just like us.
Yeah.
Joy, fear, anger, sadness.
Oh, absolutely.
And they haven't necessarily learned how to, control those emotions yet, so they experience them really powerfully.
Our source actually talks about this and uses this really vivid quote from Traherne. He talks about being terrified as a kid when evening would come. He calls it a lowering and sad evening and says this wanton horror would come over him.
Wow.
I know, right? It makes you think about how something that seems simple to us, like the light changing or a sudden noise, could be really scary for a little kid.
It really highlights how important it is for kids to have a safe and nurturing environment, especially in those early years.
Totally. They need to feel secure so they can, explore their emotions without being totally overwhelmed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If their world feels chaotic or unpredictable, it makes it that much harder for them to learn how to handle their big feelings.
So we've got these incredible learning machines who are also figuring out right and wrong, experiencing these big emotions. What about imagination, though? We always think about kids being so imaginative. Does our source talk about that at all?
It does. And it actually challenges that assumption a bit. It basically says that kids don't need to rely on imagination as much as we think, because their senses are already so highly developed, they're totally tuned into the physical world around them.
So it's not that they're living in La La Land. They're just super present in the moment, soaking it all in.
Exactly. Think about it. They're constantly touching things. Tasting, smelling, listening, looking. They're using all their senses to gather information about the world.
Like little scientists doing experiments all day long.
Exactly. They're testing things out, seeing what happens, and then drawing conclusions based on their experiences.
Which, honestly, when you really think about it, takes a lot of brain power. We just go through the world relying on all the stuff we already know, but they're building that knowledge from the ground up, constantly updating it with every new thing they encounter.
It's amazing to watch, isn't it? Seeing them make those connections, spotting patterns, figuring things out at an incredible pace.
It really drives home that point that they're not just empty vessels, They come into the world with this incredible capacity to learn and understand, each in their own unique way.
And maybe that's the most important takeaway from all of this. We have to remember that babies are born persons with their own perspectives, their own way of seeing and experiencing the world.
It's like they're reminding us that there's always something new to discover if we can just open our minds and see the world through their eyes.
Beautifully said.
It's amazing, isn't it? When we really stop and think about all the things babies are taking in and figuring out, it really makes you realize how much we underestimate them.
It really does.
We've seen how much they're learning, how they're developing a sense of right and wrong, experiencing these really intense emotions.
And doing it all at an incredible pace, with these brains that are just firing on all cylinders.
It really makes you wonder, what if we could start treating babies like the capable little learners they are right from the get-go? How would that change things?
It's a really fascinating question. Imagine if, instead of just trying to teach them things our way, we really tried to understand how they see the world, how they learn best.
Yeah, what if we approach them with this sense of, hey, you have so much to teach me?
Exactly. What if we saw them as partners in learning, not just, empty vessels to fill?
I love that. Partners in learning.
I think it would radically change how we approach those early years. Could transform parenting, education, everything.
Instead of just focusing on getting them to hit those milestones, we could focus on creating an environment where their natural curiosity and love of learning can flourish.
Absolutely. And I think it would be beneficial for both sides, not just for the babies, but for us as adults too. We might rediscover some of that childlike wonder and curiosity that we tend to lose as we get older.
Oh, for sure. That sense of awe and possibility.
Exactly. And when we approach those early interactions with that kind of openness and respect, it allows babies to really thrive.
So to all our listeners out there, next time you're with a baby, take a moment to really see them.
Yeah.
Listen to them. Connect with that amazing mind that's unfolding. You might be surprised at what you discover.
You just might.
This has been an incredible deep dive. I've learned so much. Thanks for joining me.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.